Remember the Cheesecake Factory woman? How it wasn't good enough? Well, I've got a Mimi's Cafe one. Welcome back to Far From Eden. And if you're new here, welcome. I've been sharing some stories from my childhood that I think can shed some light on the topic of men in the West and how marriage is a raw deal and what they've been dealing with for the last decades. I mean, we're all hearing like red pill content now, but it didn't just start. Like, there are men who, endured long marriages, or men that were in marriages that they thought were solid, and then, after 25 years of marriage, no mas, no more. So, honestly, I learn more every day from reading the comments that I get from these videos. I might know of something that's going on out there from the men I've talked to, but then when you guys comment about it and I'm like, oh my God, it's way more. It's way more than I think I even thought. And I even said to somebody the other day that MGTOW's been a thing for a lot longer than anybody ever uttered the syllables MGTOW. Men have made that decision who've never heard it. And sorry about that. Sure enough, man after man after man just in the comments. And this is a small channel. It's not a big channel, And I just am like, it's everywhere. It really is. But anyways, I can talk about that for a while. If you've seen any of my videos, you're like, oh boy, here she goes. She's getting revved up. Yep. But we're here to talk about the Mimi's Cafe story, which is actually not a long story at all. But for some reason stuck in my head. And I think we're going to I think that part's probably the most interesting, is why did it stick with me? And yeah, so my memory of it is that, and what was my age? Maybe, I want to say around 12. But I could have been a little younger, a little older. So I remember my dad saying there was a new restaurant. At least that's what I remember. It was a new restaurant. He was excited to go to it. And the name of it was Mimi's Cafe. I don't know if this is when Mimi's Cafe first started or that was when the first one came to our area. I don't know. But anyway, he was excited. And I remember feeling happy about it. I remember it was like, goody, because you feed off of the dad's energy like that. At least I did. And so I remember that. And then the next thing I remember is we were there, my whole family, sibling and mother and father. I don't think anybody went with us. The au pair must not have been, / that's a nanny in American English. Au pair is a nanny. So she must not have been there because I think I would have remembered that. So that probably puts me at about 12. Anyway, so I think I don't want to say it because it's like, I don't want to go back there. It was so uncomfortable. So I don't remember when the complaining started. We were at the table at some point, and it could have been that the waiter didn't come and get our drink order fast enough or get our order fast enough. But my mom was definitely complaining about the waiter and like the wait, like the wait times, that kind of, the service. And complaining about the service. I remember the food was cold. Her food was cold, I guess. She was very good at being able to tell if her food was not warm enough, because I remember other times at restaurants, obviously, this was not the first time that there was a problem. But I remember on the other times when she would complain that her food was cold, she might even ask around, is your food cold? I'd be like, no, it's great. But either way, you're wrong, because if your food's fine, then, oh, you know, it just happens to her, right? Or, oh, she's the bad guy. And then, or if it's also cold, then it's like, oh, well, the whole thing is just bad. Look at all this, you know, so you're really not safe either way you answer. So you sort of answer apologetically, regardless of what your answer is. You're just like, can you skip me? I'm fine. Everything's fine, but I hate it. Like, there's no good answer. So her food was cold and it took forever, and you know, she let the waiter know, and you know, and that wasn't too rare of an occasion to be like traumatic for me to go, here's a memory that I had where my mom complained at a restaurant. No, that would all run together. And I think that's why the specific complaints are not clear to me about Mimi's Cafe. But what I remember is that she seemed to blame my dad for choosing the restaurant. In this part, now I've just triggered my brain. Now I know. So here's why and how it was my dad's fault. Ready? This is so crafty. So at that time, for whatever reason, my mom hated anything French. It didn't seem weird to me, because being from the other side of my family, being British, hating the French is just sort of like, that's normal. It's, if you know, you know, right? Do I have any people from the UK? Is that still a thing? I don't know. But anyway, so yeah, hating the French, it's like, well, of course you do. Anyway, so my mom could hold my dad responsible for taking us to this place that had like bad service and cold food, because it's a French restaurant and he should know that, you know, she's not going to like any of the food. And she also, in her defense, she did have Crohn's disease. However, I've eaten at Mimi's Cafe, you know, since then. I'm like, there's stuff you can order. Like, it's a restaurant, like, you know, anyway. But that's always a good way too, because how are you gonna, you know, you can use an illness to win arguments, and that is bad form, I can say, from personal experience. If you're new here and you're still watching, awesome. And I'm just saying, like, side note, diagnosed with MS 23 years ago. That's why I'm saying, like, you don't use your illness as an excuse. But anyway, so yeah, I wish I could remember the exact words she said to him, but I think it was more like looks and comments that insinuated it's your fault without saying it. Women are very good at plausible deniability. If you've ever heard them say, well, technically it wasn't a lie. Well, I didn't actually say that. No, of course they didn't. And when they say those things to you, I didn't technically say that, I didn't technically lie, that's an admission of sorts, because they pulled out that plausible deniability a little too quick to be like, well, I didn't technically lie. You were awfully ready with that explanation, weren't you? You know, so just so you know, that's a little thing. If they say it like that, that's pretty much an admission. So she was good like that, to just, you know, be like, well, why did you choose this place? You know, sort of things like that, that saying them outside of the context, you're like, well, that's harmless. Of course, that's how it's supposed to sound. That's so women, when they go and tell their friends, they can be like, well, this is what I said. And it's like, oh, and it doesn't sound like a big deal when she tells it. So those were the sorts of things. But trust me when I say she definitely was like, you shouldn't have taken us to this new restaurant. And my dad would deal with things with humor a lot of times. And I think too, because we kids were there, I'm sure he felt like he needed to provide some levity, and also the wait staff. I started to do that also as I got older, be even self-deprecating. I remember him saying, well, it's because I chose it. That's why we're having the bad luck at the restaurant, with the slow service and the, it's because I chose it, And I remember, and this is what I alluded to in the beginning of me telling this story about what I remember, and what bothered me was that I saw my dad be hurt. I saw him deflate. He was trying to do a nice thing for his family and take them out to a restaurant that he thought sounded good and yummy and fun. And he was excited about it. And my mom, just crapped all over it. And I saw what that did to him. I didn't understand it at the time. But I remember wanting to take it away. I remember that was worse than the embarrassment of, my mom complaining and me being uncomfortable when she gets angry, like, don't want to draw the fire. I remember thinking it wouldn't be so bad to draw the fire. I really, really did not like how I could see how my dad felt. And there were other times that she did that too. And particularly when one year he bought season tickets to the nearest big city. He bought season tickets to the the Arts Center, like Broadway shows for the season, right? For the touring companies. And I was so excited. He had taken us to our first shows in London. I think I was 10 and just fell in love with it. Actually, well, he took me we saw Annie when I was a little girl, but that was, when I was little. And then I think the next one was Starlight Express by Andrew Lloyd Webber, which, if you're not familiar, but he did Cats, think, okay, not Cats, but Trains. And I just thought it was amazing. And I could still sing you some songs from it. But I have seen it another time since then, so that explains it. But anyway, so I'm getting excited thinking about that. But my dad made sure we had those experiences. And, when the show was good, Mom was happy. When the show was not so good, it was like it was my dad's fault. And the other thing that I hated, that he had a friend he had business associates, and he had people who worked for him, for his company. And he had a guy that he used to work. No, he worked with him. This man never worked for him. So they worked together, but they have stayed friends. I mean, they're probably still friends today. In fact, I know they are. Anyway, and they were, people's houses we would go over, and I think they even stayed with us for a bit. So he was married at the time, and his wife was a ballerina, and a very, very good one. So in the big city nearest to us, different city at that time, but the big city nearest us, she was in the ballet company, and we were able to go and see the Nutcracker with her in it, which I was so excited because it was like, oh my gosh, I knew her. I knew one of the ballerinas. I still don't know which one she was in the whole Nutcracker. Like, they kept telling me, but I was like, I don't know. I can't recognize her. Anyway, and I wasn't going to interrupt, during and be like, hey, Dad, which one is she? So I don't think he knows to this day that I don't know which one she was. Like you guys do. So anyways, oh boy. Yeah, so, but I loved the whole thing. And to this day, because of that, because my dad told me Tchaikovsky is the composer, so Tchaikovsky is my favorite classical composer. Not that I am a connoisseur at all. I am an idiot when it comes to music. I wish I'd learned. But yeah, so to this day, because I think because I associate it with all of that. So that was always great. Of course, my sister liked it too, and it was something we all did together, and we're going to this, into the city, and it was just a big deal. And you want to know, now, full disclosure, I love my mom to this day. She passed away, some years back. I love her. Nobody is perfect. I forgive her. I know the trauma that she experienced as a child that created her. She did a lot of things for me. She taught me a lot of good things. However, two things can be true at the same time. And this happened, and I hated it, and she fell asleep. Now, you might be like, nobody noticed me. She's like this. No, head back, mouth open, asleep. You think I'm going to be like, I was the one, though, that was like, gently. It's like, but the key was, here's the key. Tell her, Mom, your mouth was open. Because you're protecting her. She wouldn't want to be embarrassed. So I appealed to her vanity rather than, what the heck do you think you're doing? This is totally disrespectful. Knock it off. I wasn't going to do that. She might get up, throw something down on the ground, and storm off. I mean, I knew, I needed to be careful. There was another time in a restaurant, I'll tell you that in a second about storm off, since this is just Mimi's Cafe and some other little stories. Yeah, wow, okay. All the stories are just, I didn't think of it before. So she fell asleep, mouth open, several times. And so I would just basically, your mouth was open. So she, of course, would just sit up. I knew that it would get her to wake up and, try to stay awake. I'm sorry. There is no try, only do. You can't, you either try to stay awake or you don't give a crap. And she didn't give a crap. So there was another time, and we were at a horse show, and we had gone out to dinner. I think it was the end of the day. It must have been, because I can't remember trying to recover from this drama. So it was and this is one of the worst times. Oh, this is bad. Because usually at a horse show, my memories there are oh, everybody was happy. Because as long as my sister or I could win, and generally either one of us was doing that during this time frame, it could keep the people happy, keep her happy, therefore keep all the drama down. And I'm really making her sound like she was a monster all the time, and she wasn't. It was not acceptable, but I just want to say that. So we were in the restaurant, and she and my father got to conversing about something, and I don't remember what it was. Sometimes that happens in my memory, where something happens that's so shocking that I kind of forget what happened right before that. I don't forget, like I have amnesia, but I'm like, that's when I can't remember what the exact words were. But they were having an exchange. And I think this was an accident. She stood up super fast, and so fast that her chair fell down behind her, and she threw down like her silverware or something and stormed out of the restaurant. No idea where she was going. And usually horse shows are not in the best parts of town because the real estate for the show grounds sometimes is a fairground, so that's not so good. I kind of felt like this one was okay. I didn't worry about it so much as as some of the others, so I don't remember worrying for her safety at that particular point, but I remember being so embarrassed because we were there with like other competitors, and it was just like, oh my God. And it was so awkward. She got up and left. I don't even remember how it resolved. I don't know if she found her way back to the hotel, if she found her way back to the barn. I don't know if she took the car. I don't remember any of that. I just remember that moment where she stood up and that chair flipped out, like fell behind her. It was a heavy chair. So I don't know. It was a pretty nice restaurant, but they had to put some tables together, and this was like a chair that you would, scooch up. It wasn't like a flimsy little thing, and it made a sound. I don't think she meant for the chair. I don't think she thought the chair was going to do that. She was fairly reactive. It wasn't like she sat there and planned it out. And she probably didn't know she was going to storm out. It probably was the chair that fell back that she was like, I better follow through. That was the only time she'd ever, stormed out of a place in public. Making a scene was all right, a little bit, to a degree. I don't think this was the plan. She never did that before that or since then, as far as storming out. But furniture also didn't hit the ground, so maybe that was the thing. But again, I know my dad, rescued the rest of the night. I'm sure that he did. And so those were some things that happened in my childhood. Some ways that I saw female nature and how wives can treat their husbands and mothers can treat their children. And I remember growing up thinking, I don't want to be like that. I don't want to be like this, how my mom is being. There were some things that I wanted to do like my mom. And I want to include those childhood memories too. And I do. I mention that in videos when I tell you, my mother was the one who really taught me to be accountable and taught me, and it was a little bit like, because she wasn't, and it was a little like, I felt accountable for everything. So it went a little too much the other way. I'd rather that be the case. My mother was the one that never told me I was pretty. She told me, and my sister, but mostly me, you're not unique, you're not special, you're just, because she didn't want me to think I was better than anybody else. And she said that, I don't want you to think you're better than anybody else. I don't want you to think you're too good for anything. I don't want you to thumb your nose, that was one of her sayings, at anyone. So those were some things that I think were very helpful for me. Now that I see some of the egos on some of these women and just the rampant narcissism, it's astounding. But yeah, she had moments, a lot of moments, and when she'd scream at my dad, I didn't want to be like that. I knew, and I thought that consciously in my mind, I don't want to be like that. I don't want to be like her. I want to be better. And I think there's times in my life when I can definitely see some of the, inability to regulate emotions at times. Nowhere near on the scale, but not as good as I am now, not as good as I have gotten, over the years. And And over the years, I mean, I started improving in my early 20s. One thing is being diagnosed with MS, you get tempered real quick as far as your attitude. And if you thought, I guess some women or anybody who gets a disease like that, if you think you deserve something in life and you're owed something, and then you get a disease like that says, that won't be happening, then you might be even angrier, even more indignant. But at some point, you have to at least accept that, well, that's not how it works out. So you would have to adjust. What helped me, one of the things that helped me, was my mother and sister telling me, actually my mom said these words: being sick doesn't give you the right to be an a-hole. She said the words. Because I don't know what I was talking about, but I went through a time where I was really unpleasant. And it was around the time of diagnosis and, physical pain, all this stuff. But I think there was a time when I just, was overwhelmed and I was really not regulating my emotions well, on steroids, all that stuff. But that moment of being sick doesn't give you the right to be an a-hole, I was like, first of all, that is what I'm being. Oh my gosh. And for some reason, I thought I wasn't. And so that was a realization I had in that moment. Now, she must have taught me something along the way that gave me the insight to see it. My dad also. My dad has always been a very reflective individual. And I take after him in that way. And he's shared those sorts of just insights and revelations over the years. And I remember listening to him over the years speak. He's very long-winded. I have no idea if I get that from him. He is very long-winded. And anyway, so he would do that quite a bit. I like when I realize, oh yes, I do get that from my dad. To be, turning 47 this year and be like, hey, I get that from my dad. It's still good. But yeah, my mom telling me don't be an a-hole, and it doesn't mean that I've been a perfect person ever since. No one is. And I think, but I remember, that don't be an a-hole thing. And I can check myself. It's a tool to check myself. And I'm glad that I have it. I'm glad that I was raised to be able to see it. He was just, yeah. I always thought I think I wanted to be wise like that and be reflective. And I thought, you can really, if you analyze things from before, you can learn something. I just thought it was a good thing to do, to be like that. So I did get that from him. So that's the Mimi's Cafe, etc. story. And I hope that it's provided some insight about, I don't know, how I got here, I guess, and why I want to be here and say what I want to say. Because the first one I saw suffer was my dad. And I saw how it was done in the marriage, to break up the marriage, after the marriage. I saw it. So that's a reason why I'm here. And I know that you guys have experienced things like this and worse. And people don't care. They don't give enough weight to hurting a man's pride. And they should. It's not nothing. You know, people act like, oh, that's just an ego. No, it's more than that. So when she was like, oh, you chose the restaurant, oh, you know, and it really, really gutted him. Because he was trying to do something nice for his family, and she had no idea what that meant to him. So, I'm getting myself revved up again. I might remember 42 more stories while we're here, so better call that a night. I definitely don't need to get revved up again. So I hope that you guys are well, and I hope that you have a good rest of your day, and take care of yourselves. All right? See you on the next one.